Blake never went to a madhouse, but he was used to being called mad. He said he got his reward in heaven, and it didn't matter that no one on earth acknowledged him.
When you see the sunrise, do you not see a fiery disk, somewhat like a guinea? Oh no. No, I see an innumerable company of the heavenly host, crying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty." That's something William Blake wrote once to describe what it was like to live on the cosmic plane and the earthly plane all at once, which is where he felt he lived. Or to describe, as we might say, what it was like to be mad. But Blake seems much too able and efficient to really be a mad guy. He produced an enormous output of work, of fantastic quality and richness and technical accomplishment. Although none of it strayed very far from the Bible, from the extreme good-bad moral world of Bible stories. The Bible was divine, not rational, and Blake was irrational, but not mad. It's part of his mythology for us that he saw visions, but what does that mean? That he actually saw them out there on the streets of Soho, where I'm going back to now with my headache, or that he saw that there are other realities?
Blake's older brother, John, was the first in the family to see visions. Blake took over the role of family vision seer when he was 5. He saw angels in a tree in Peckham Rye, and he saw God in the garden. Whether he thought these things really happened to him, or he just said it to provoke, we don't know. Like Van Gogh, Blake only became famous after his death, but with Blake it was for his poetry as much as his pictures. He wrote great legends of existence, like a new Bible. But with Blake there was nothing straightforward about the idea of God. He keeps changing God from good to bad. Sometimes he calls him Nobodaddy, a mixture of God and nobody. Blake joins biblical figures with real figures, famous scientists and poets who lived in his own day, and even his own relatives, to whom he ascribed divine powers. Religion, art, transcendentalism. This is what Blake stands for, and this is his life mask, in a glass case like a Damien Hirst sculpture. Blake is supposed to be the great influencer of the young British artists. He's only a small part like them though. He had interesting off-the-wall ideas, and they do too. But he was religious, sincere, and he believed he saw visions, and any one of those would be absurd for an artist now. God is man, Blake believed, and here is God creating man.
Blake was an outcast. He seems to have made every effort to cast himself out. It would be incredibly tiresome in our world. He lived through the rise of industrialization, commercialization, and rationalism. He was against all three. All these pictures are about the fallen state of man. That one is Isaac Newton, Blake's contemporary, towering genius of science, who Blake saw as an utterly negative figure, blind to the universe, so lost is he in his little abstract geometric calculations. It's like the whole weight of the picture leans towards that little triangle. This is the Old Testament figure, King Nebuchadnezzar, who built Babylon for his own self-aggrandizement. Here, living like a beast, his hair and beard grown out, his fingers and toenails all horrible. The message there is that he who walks in pride, the Lord shall abase. Blake was for ancient knowledge, mysticism and spiritualism. He thought England was the thing, but not the same England everyone else lived in. England was sleeping. Blake was going to wake it up with poetry and art. England would be a great triumph of mighty angels, redemption and celebration, instead of what it was in mundane reality, seediness and tyranny.
What made Blake such a hit in the 1960s wasn't the charm of his pictures, as they aren't charming but actually slightly creepy, but the idea that he could transcend reality and go somewhere else. His pictures seemed to be messages from another world, those constant signs of flighty imagination that they have, and fiery, powerful, apocalyptic transcendentalism. In his book, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, published in 1790, Blake wrote, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. For man has closed himself up, so he sees all things through narrow chinks in his own cavern." Being in a prison of your own device, instead of being fully alive, is the big problem that 1960s mystical enlightenment was supposed to deal with. Aldous Huxley had already decided that transcendental experience was the way for modern man to go in the 50s. Huxley's book, The Doors of Perception, title taken from Blake, came out then. I can hear his crackly voice on the BBC now, introducing a bit of mind-blowing LSD talk to a shocked audience having their tea.
Very extraordinary. In your book about mescaline recently, you talked of a state of heightened perception being induced by proper drugs. Do you think imaginative writers would benefit by that?
Anybody who's read the Wordsworth's Ode on the Intimations of Immortality and who's also taken lysergic acid, let's say, knows quite well that Wordsworth spontaneously had this, and quite clearly Blake had it too. I think it would be extremely good for almost anybody with fixed ideas to take this thing and to realize that the world he has constructed is by no means the only world, that there are these extraordinary other types of universe which we may inhabit and which we should be very grateful for inhabiting, I think.
Huxley lived in the California desert. He took LSD regularly until he died. In fact, he was on acid when he died in 1963. It was his last request for his wife to give him 400 milligrams of it to see him off. After Huxley, who was posh, came another big acid head who was pop. R.D. Laing. The Politics of Experience and the Bird of Paradise. Published here in its Penguin edition from the late 60s with a Hieronymus Bosch cover, which has almost become a cultural artifact in itself. In it, Laing says that alienation is the thing, the horrible thing about normal modern life. We are alienated from our own experience. We are strange, bemused creatures, he writes, strangers to ourselves and to other people and to the spiritual and material world. He was against deceit and lies. He wanted to hunt them out and destroy them wherever they were. See the truth of reality in all its uncomfortableness and awkwardness, which is something that we expect modern art to do. Tracy Emin and Her Unmade Bed. But he was for giving little bits of whimsical, humorous, semi-surreal advice. He once advised a woman who complained that her body suddenly became frozen, sometimes for hours on end. She couldn't move her limbs. He advised her to get a job as an artist model. There's the key turning in another door of perception, opening up onto Laing's book tours and lectures of the 1970s, when he was the most widely read author of psychiatric books in the world. Laing took LSD, and he advocated LSD treatment for his patients, for anything from schizophrenia to loneliness. He wanted to totally redefine what psychiatry was, with his concept of anti-psychiatry, where you treated patients as human beings, just like you.
You've got to clear away the rubble of all sorts of things to give you and her, if you're going to be her therapist, a space where you can meet with her, where she's not going to be frightened that you're going to put her away if you think that she's getting too ill.
He was resisted by the psychiatric establishment. They found him too unconventional.
Dr. Laing, this is one of the largest crowds we've had here for a speaker. Is this merely an example of the high stature you have for yourself and that you're presenting us with any old rotten baggage and expect us to applaud?
Before you have the presumption and the fucking cheek to come on in that way, that you consider that you listen to it again, and then you might discover that there's more method in what I said and more organization in what I said than you have been able to hear.